Hello. The PG and Research Center of English, Lady Doak College, is delighted in welcoming each of you who has joined this webinar on fairy tales and aging. I, on behalf of the department, extend a hearty welcome to the Principal and Secretary of Lady Doak College, Dr. Christiana Singh. We are honored to welcome the speaker of the day, Dr. S. Samuel Rufus, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Madras Christian College. A special welcome to our guests from the United Board, Dr. Woi Ching Angela Wong, Vice President for Programs, Mr. Kevin Henderson, Director, Digital Content and Programming, Ms. Teiko Suga, Program Associate, and Reverend Dr. Mahas Perman, Consultant, Director of South Asia Programs. I extend our welcome to all the faculty friends and students from other institutions. And lastly, I welcome my dear colleagues and students to this intellectual deliberation. I now request our chaplain and Associate Professor of English, Dr. Jessie Ranjita Jebaselvi, to invoke Lord Almighty's blessings with her words of prayer.
Good afternoon. I would like to read a verse from the Bible, James chapter 1, verse 17. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. Let us pray. Our gracious and loving Heavenly Father, fount of all wisdom and knowledge, thank you for every perfect gift we receive from you. We especially thank you for this webinar on fairy tales and aging. Praise you, Lord, for the resource person, Dr. Samuel Rufus, whom you have chosen to enlighten us this day. May the words of wisdom shared by him enrich every participant of the webinar. We are grateful, Lord, for the generous support of the United Board for Christian Higher Education in Asia and its commitment towards education. Thank you, Master, for the presence of Dr. Woi Ching Angela Wong, Mr. Kevin Henderson, Dr. Mahas Perman, and Ms. Teiko Suga, and for the pivotal role they play in promoting quality learning. We commit the entire session into their hands. May this time of knowledge sharing strengthen our fraternal bonds, open new avenues of learning, and inspire us to contribute to the society. Let the efforts taken by Mrs. Hilela as project leader bring constructive changes in the academic scenario. In Jesus, the Supreme Educator's name, we pray. Amen.
Thank you, ma'am. I request the Principal and Secretary, Dr. Christiana Singh, to deliver the introductory remarks.
Greetings to all who've come together in this virtual platform and in person to set on sale a very interesting project that has been very thoughtfully worked on by our very young and promising faculty member, Ms. Hilela. The project in itself is in line with what Lady Doak College believes in, to create new areas of learning, which is basically beyond one's own discipline. We believe in promoting an interdisciplinary approach for the study, for the furtherance of knowledge. And this project is about creating an interdisciplinary asynchronous course titled Literature and Gerontology. We acknowledge with gratitude the role that United Board has played in helping us to promote whole person education. This project comes under the Whole Person Education Digital Content Development Grant that was given to us in 2021. It is that part that says no pandemic or no challenge would keep us down. We will surface and surface with more power. This course includes perspectives on aging from literature, biology, sociology, and theology. Quite exciting. Well, the purpose of this webinar is to provoke interest to know more about literature and gerontology, and to let a wider audience know about the course that is going to be launched. Fairy tales and aging. We believe in fairy tales as young ones. We seem to lose the magic as we age. Fairy tales and aging. We listen to fairy tales in our childhood, and it definitely impacts our thinking process, our belief systems, and behavioral patterns. Fairy tales are often liked and enjoyed by children with many elements of fantasy like goblins, fairies. I think of Tinkerbell and Stardust. Most fairy tales focus on a young maiden and the struggles she faces owing to villainous characters or a character until she meets her Prince Charming and they get married to live happily ever after. Well, this seemingly innocent celebration of beauty and youth have many strong, harmful undercurrents. For example, the villains in these tales are often old people, witches, and stepmothers are often depicted as old women. This leads to reinforcement of negative stereotypes about old age. Further, while celebrating youth and related aspects, they often portray old age as gloomy and unfortunate, a very unfortunate time. Well, in this course, let's hope that many of us who have the opportunity to look at it from an interdisciplinary angle will be able to take up that magic wand and sprinkle stardust in driving away, getting rid of these stereotypes. And may we all live happily ever after, understanding that there is beauty. There's something precious even in old age. God bless you, Helena, and God bless all the people who are behind this project. God bless our network, and may we grow from strength to strength in furthering interdisciplinary learning, as well as making an attempt to get a worldwide audience for our courses. Thank you. I'm excited. God bless.
Thank you, ma'am, for setting the tone for the webinar. This webinar is part of a project sponsored by the United Board for Christian Higher Education in Asia, creating an interdisciplinary asynchronous course titled Literature and Gerontology. I call the project leader, Ms. Hilela, Assistant Professor of English, to brief us on the project.
Greetings to all. This webinar is part of the project, an interdisciplinary asynchronous course on literature and gerontology, as mentioned earlier. And the outcome of the project is going to be creating an online course. The course will be titled Literature and Gerontology. This course is about aging. Aging is an unavoidable part of life. Although we don't like to talk about it or even acknowledge the fact that we will all grow old one day, but still we are growing old. And we may be rich or poor, strong or weak, we may belong to any class or anything, but still this is something that we face. It's a universal experience. So a proper perspective concerning old age is essential for the individuals as well as for the society at large. So this course offers a creative and engaging way to affect an individual's civic responsibility and also aid in whole person education. Next slide. Who is this next one? Who is this next one? Next slide, please. Yeah. Who is this course for? This course will be a beginner's level course. It will not require any educational prerequisites. That is, people from any discipline can enroll, because as I said earlier, this is a universal experience and all of us need to know more about it. So this is and there's no age limit to this as well. This is suitable for anyone who would like to view aging from an interdisciplinary perspective and also analyze the different aspects of aging creatively through literature, and also look at the harsh realities of life using humor, stories, and interesting comparisons. Next slide, please. Course outcomes. On successful completion of the course, the learners will be able to demonstrate an understanding of the theme of aging in literature, illustrate the significance of the literary expressions of the aging process, develop critical thinking over the concerns of aging and empathy for older adults, examine different perspectives on aging. Next slide. This course is unique in many ways. Firstly, I'd like to say that this existing online courses on aging usually focus on the biological aspect like Alzheimer's disease, etc., or they go into sociological perspective fully to analyze caregiver burden and all that, or economic perspective to focus on financial problems in old age. But this course is unique in the fact that it primarily focuses on literature, and it includes perspectives from biology, sociology, and theology as well. So this course is also designed in such a way to encourage immediate application to life, and the concepts are presented in a relatable way, and it also caters to different kinds of learners. So it has a variety of components. For example, there are animated video lectures for those who are interested in audio-visual learning, and there are meaningful tasks along with discussion forum activities. That is, as part of the course, they will be asked to involve in certain assignments related with old people. And there will be, of course, reading materials, and there's introspection at the end of each unit. So this allows time for the learners to think about the aging process, and also what they've learned and how they are going to apply that in their lives. Because more than what a concept means, what it means for me, I think that's much more important. So there's introspection after each unit. And this course is also unique in the fact that there are different kinds of outlook that is portrayed here. There are old people who are suffering. There are also old people who make others suffer. There are also, there may be old people who are confident. There are confident old women. And there are people who are lonely and desperate for affection. So there are all kinds of old people there. And so we made it a point that while framing the syllabus, we are not looking at aging from one perspective, as if all the old people are all victims. Definitely that is not the case. So there are times when they are victims, but there are also times when they are extremely productive and can contribute a lot to the society as well. So, so they are not a welfare class as yet. So, this course, so it includes outlook from different perspectives as well. Next slide. I'd like to mention a little about the syllabus. It includes literature from different nationalities. There's an Australian writer, one British writer, one Roman writer, few American writers, an African American writer, one Indian writer, a Jewish immigrant in Britain, an Irish writer, and there are also few folk tales as well. And so that anybody can relate with the context. So different nationalities are included. And also different genres of literature are also included here. Poems, one-act play, short stories, movie, and a prose piece as well. If we look at the writers, they are mostly 20th or 21st century writers, but there are also writers from BC. That's the Roman writer is, he belongs to a previous century. And the duration of the course will be for 4 weeks. Each week, we'll have the learners will have to spend around 4 hours to finish the content. And so this is about the syllabus. So video lectures and reading materials are given by, the video lectures and reading materials for biological perspective is given by Dr. Udaya B. Jagadeesan. She is a practicing geriatrician and a chief medical officer working in Massachusetts, USA. And for sociological perspective, Dr. Rupa Ravikumar, she is a former faculty of Lady Doak College, who's been teaching gerontology for more than 30 years. And for giving theological perspective, we have Reverend Dr. John Samuel Ponusamy, who is currently the Dean of Doctoral Studies in Gurukul Lutheran Theological College, Chennai. And for literature, I have given the overall course design and lectures from literature were given by me. Now, a very short video, less than 2 minutes, of some of the highlights in the course will be shared. Here in this video, you will see some clips from the animated video lectures only, not from the other components, only that will be shared now.
Now focusing on oral health. Why does dental care become challenging with aging? There are many reasons. Number 1, simple wear and tear.
Older adults will usually maintain the same activities, behaviors, personalities and relationships as they did in their earlier years of life, despite their changing physical, mental, and social status.
I would discuss 7 aspects of spirituality in old age. 1. Spirituality of fulfillment.
The grandfather in the story is physically weak but mentally sharp. He speaks very slowly because he's weak. Further, he is dependent on others for his mobility and he uses a wheelchair.
Begin the panel discussion on aging and look at it from biological, psychosocial, and theological perspectives in relation to literature.
So, exercise with aging. I'm a big proponent for exercise.
Okay, thank you very much for listening. I now request Mr. Kevin Henderson, Director, Digital Content and Programming, United Board, to honor us by saying a few words about the project.
Hello, everyone. I hope that you can hear me. My greetings to you, first of all, from New York, where I'm representing the United Board. Joined today by my colleagues, Dr. Wai-Ching Wong, and also Spurgeon, who many of you know. My colleague, Ms. Tayako Suga, was not able to be with us this morning, but she sends her greetings as well. This is a unique project, and it's really emblematic of the focus for the grant scheme that it was part of. As was mentioned, this project was funded as part of the Whole Person Education Digital Content and Development Grant. And the goal of that grant was to fund innovative projects that would advance the teaching of whole person education and of concepts related to it. And this grant, or this project, from when it first came across our desk and we saw it, we thought it was quite innovative. And we're really looking forward to the finished project, or the finished product of the course, and everything that will stem from this. So thank you again for having us here this morning, and we're looking forward to everything that's discussed.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Hilela, for orienting the audience on this exciting course that is breaking grounds and opening avenues in the up and coming field of study, literature and gerontology. I'm sure this course will help us turn around and step away from being an ageist society. I call Dr. Geeta Kanagraj, Head, PG and Research Center of English, to introduce the speaker for the day.
It is a signal honor indeed to introduce the speaker of this webinar. It is a signal honor indeed to introduce the speaker of this webinar, Dr. Samuel Rufus. He's an assistant professor of PG and Research Department of English at Madras Christian College and an associate dean of student affairs. I'm going to share a winner's story, and by the end of it, I'm sure we would be inspired to emulate Dr. Rufus A winner who showed promising signs of success even as a student. A winner who showed promising signs of success even as a student when he received his university gold medal in MA English, and also when he was a recipient of the President Venkatraman Gold Medal for Academic Excellence in the Bharatidasan University, Tiruchirappalli. And in 2002, when he received it from His Excellency, the Governor of Tamil Nadu, Shri P.S. Ramamohan Rao. Friends, I had to ruthlessly crop several details from his curriculum vitae because sharing his achievements would take a separate session by itself. The special interest that Dr. Rufus has taken in organizing innumerable lectures goes to prove his aim at how both the faculty and the students need to advance their knowledge, update themselves, and get benefited. Every speaker for those lectures he organized has been carefully chosen to get the best out of them in those areas that they have specialized. His paper presentations and seminars are countless in number. He has not only authored and edited several books, but also published articles innumerable in books and journals, and serves as an editor for 3 reputed journals. Dr. Rufus is a member of the doctoral committees in Periyar University, Salem, Loyola College, Chennai, Bokaro Steel City College, VIT Chennai campus, Manonmaniam Sundaranar University, Tirunelveli, Hindustan University, Chennai, and Kannur University, Kerala. He is part of the board of examiners in various city colleges and deemed universities in Tamil Nadu. If one were to search for a college he has never been connected to in Tamil Nadu, you would miserably fail. He seems to be a favorite of an exhaustive number of colleges that belong to 2 states, Tamil Nadu and Kerala, where he has been the resource person, chairperson for paper presentation sessions, plenary speaker in conferences, keynote speaker in international conferences, external expert for academic audit, and many, many more. In his work, we see a combination of profession with passion. I have come to a conclusion that nothing is impossible with Dr. Rufus, who is a live wire involved in multiple academic activities, an enthusiast in the world of academics. What a much wanted academician. Thank you for accepting our invitation, Dr. Samuel Rufus.
I request the chief guest and the speaker of the day, Dr. Samuel Rufus, to address the audience now.
Thank you, ma'am. Am I audible? Yes.
You are audible, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for Lady Doak College Department of English for having me here on this wonderful afternoon. And thank you, Optia, for sponsoring this wonderful project. And thank you, Dr. Geeta Kanagraj, for those warm words. I don't know whether I deserve any of them, but thank you for your lovely words. I hope at least 1% I'm worthy of it. And straight away I'll go into the topic at hand because the time limit for me is also less. And please tell me if there is a problem in audio or video. You may stop me midway. And I really appreciate the Department of English, especially Professor Hinela, for coming up with this wonderful project. I would say if that wonderful 1962 book by Thomas Kuhn, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, he gave us a word called paradigmatic shift or paradigm shift. So in the 1980s, Madras Christian College came up with a wonderful course called Eco-Criticism, which was a paradigm shift for literary studies. The second paradigm shift that we are seeing today is from Ladydale College, giving us a very wonderful course on literary gerontology or literature and gerontology. So after the 1980s, the second paradigm shift in the 2020s, the credit goes to Ladydale College, because even many great colleges all over the state or India have been mulling over this course, but not many have introduced this course as part of their curriculum. So congratulations Ladydale College for having this very innovative interdisciplinary course that I'm sure is going to be a trendsetter of sorts to arts and science colleges all over India and the world. Not only that, I am also sure that this interdisciplinarity that you celebrate is going to be a pioneering one of sorts. I always begin with an axiomatic statement that I believe in that says, literature transforms, theory liberates, research makes a difference. So I repeat, literature transforms. It doesn't change us, it rather transforms us. Then theory liberates us. Now in this study, interdisciplinary study, you are going to apply some theories to the application of literary texts. The next one is research. It's going to make a difference. The research that is going on in this budding field is really going to make a difference. How the perspectives that we have towards the process of aging. Martin Heidegger tells us, one of the famous philosophers of the 20th century tells us, every day of our lives is a step towards that ultimate reality that is death. Every day of our life is a step towards that ultimate reality that lies ahead of us. So, aging has received bouquets and brickbats all over the centuries. Now, this concept was given to me on fairy tales and aging. I was given two choices. So, I took up fairy tales and aging. I'm not going into any particular fairy tale in detail because of the paucity of time, but I would like to give you vistas or entry points to enhance this understanding of these two wonderful fields, fairy tales and aging. Enhance our engagement with these two wonderful fields. I'll just start with how aging as a performative discourse. Performative, we all know, something that comes with repeated, repetition we call it, repeated stylization of the body. Over a period of time, spontaneous repetitions, periodic repetitions over a period of time results in the performative. Judith Butler in the Gender Trouble 1990 book, a very famous pioneering trendsetting book of sorts, she talks about how the performative is a repetition of certain gestures of the body. So I just quote her verbatim: the repeated stylization of the body, a set of repeated acts within a highly regulatory frame that congeal in time to produce the appearance of substance of a natural sort of being. It naturalizes how, by the performative process. Oh, it's a girl, we say. The moment the word girl is spelled out, when a baby is born, the moment the word girl is spelled out, it's a girl, it's a boy, the performative takes over. After that, society has given it a natural sort of being naturalized. That's why Simone de Beauvoir in the 1949 book, The Second Sex, says one is not born but becomes a woman. How does this becoming a woman happen? The performative. So it is naturalized, but it is not natural. The same with aging. Something that is naturalized over a period of time, as like our principal rightly said, representations of aging over a period of time using the performative. When we look at cartoons, when we read comics, the old, how are they represented? The performative. So this is one aspect that you need to have in mind, a very important part and parcel of the process of aging, the performative. Therein lies the secret. The next one is the authority of the performative depends on repetition, which requires, yes, like multiple performances. So this is the performative. Right, the second one. This is models of behavior for grooming upper class children. What is that? Fairy tales were originally meant for upper class children. Now if we could take the fairy tales pre-French Revolution and post-French Revolution, they were supposed to be giving upper class children models of conduct or models of behavior to groom them into responsible adults for the church and for the state. And that is how the fairy tales have evolved. So I saw your syllabus here. You have taken representations from all across the world, but I think one or two French aspects could also be taken into consideration. I find the French aspect slightly missing there, but the French aspect would also be very interesting and engaging. So, the pre-French Revolution, when the upper class elite, the aristocratic elite, were in need of public grooming, social etiquette, and that's where the fairy tales became a very useful tool for molding them. That's why it said here, the function of the fairy tale is not only to create a sense of awe and wonder, but also to ensure that young people will be properly groomed for their social functions in life. They provided models, behavior, codes of conduct for the schooling of, within quotes, upper class children. And so now this aspect is very important for us because, unlike folk tales or fables, fairy tales had an elite kind of a tinge to it in France, where some of the greatest writers of fairy tales have come up. Now, so this is yet another aspect about conformity in children. Not conform, it is conformity. How in 1929 Sigmund Freud gave us a wonderful work titled on civilization and its discontents. 1929 translated in 1935, right? Civilization and its discontents, where he talks about how civilization forces us into conformity. What kind of conformity is that? A conformity that makes us soft, docile bodies, passive bodies, obedient bodies, disciplined bodies, conformity to social norms of behavior and codes of conduct. And that is why the fairy tales had a great responsibility of cultivating this conformity. And when it cultivated conformity in children, obviously it prejudiced one over the other. And that is what many critics of the fairy tale have told us. Postmodern takes on fairy tales, when there is a prejudice towards one section of society, there is always a blatant violation of another section who are subjugated. So the children are privileged at the expense of the elders or the old. You have a lot of quotations that talk to you about that. Maybe towards the end we will have a discussion on that. how the proverbs related to old people have a pejorative or a negative labeling to that, and about children, they have a very positive, affirmative label to them. So this great responsibility of cultivating conformity stood the children in a very good status in society. Now, this is another aspect in the process of aging. How epistemic violence is activated in fairy tales against the elderly, where most of the time you'll find the old are portrayed as witches, as sly or wicked. A whole lot of pejorative labels associated. Not all. Let's not, essentialize again. Let's not totalize again. This is epistemic violence in the sense. This is a term used by Michel Foucault, the famous philosopher of the 20th century, one of the famous philosophers of the 20th century. Epistemic violence is a knowledge framework that violates another knowledge. That is epistemic violence. Gayatri Spivak talks about that. Epistemic violence that happens in colonial tales. In fairy tales, you have an epistemic violence that happens that privileges one section of society over the other. And that is why, in geriatric studies, it is important to look at how this epistemic violence is strategically operated or operates strategically in literatures. And epistemic violence, I read here, is a strategy in the process of domination. As a result, othering happens, and there is a loss of subjectivity. Obviously, it leads to a loss of autonomy or agency, where the aged do not have a voice for themselves and they cannot speak for themselves. They are already voiced for by somebody else, using a whole lot of epithets, sobriquets, and pejorative labels. And that is why epistemic violence in fairy tales is something that has to be discussed much in the classrooms. How it subtly operates, like hegemony, and Gramsci talks about hegemony. It is domination, a subtle domination by our consent, the same way that epistemic violence operates in the knowledge frameworks, in the literatures that you and I and we and us read every day. And obviously there is a tilt. There is a subjugation of another knowledge framework when epistemic violence happens. Right, the next one. So this is very important to see how the fairy tales have evolved, because only after the 17th and the 18th centuries, children's tales got a lot of prominence or a lot of good press. Before that, children's tales were not in vogue. Before the French Revolution happened, the upper class, the aristocratic elite, had this privilege of culturing the children with the ethos of the fairy tales. And so it was necessarily about grooming them, about giving them the proper etiquette, and schooling them in the right type of culture. In this process, a whole lot of othering also happened that should also be studied as part of this wonderful course. And I'm just giving you vistas to help you connect in this short period of time. Fairy tales before and after the French Revolution. So after the French Revolution, 1789, when liberty, equality and fraternity came up, the shift in emphasis was visible. Obviously, the shift in emphasis was towards the emancipation of the lower classes, the proletariat, against the bourgeoisie. And that is why you have, after the revolution, fairy tales catered to the not so upper classes. They catered to the interests of the lower classes, the proletariat as well, the working classes as well. Yes. And this is another very interesting area for a good research, how the gaze promotes a power imbalance. We all know about the colonial gaze, we all know about the male gaze, the female gaze. Laura Mulvey talks about it. How the gaze promotes a power imbalance in societal structures. So the aged as spectacle. You know what is a spectacle? Something that is looked upon as a spectacle. Something that you and I gaze. When there is a gaze, there is a power imbalance. That is why I've said this earlier also. In Wordsworth especially, we can't necessarily call Wordsworth a true a nature poet. The reason is he went to nature as a kind of a comfort or a solace. The gaze that you find in his poems is one way. It is not two way. There is a power imbalance. It's a kind of exploiting nature for our own solace. It is not a two-way process. Because the gaze, the daffodils also you have it. In the gaze, always there is one who is emancipated and the other who is looked upon as a spectacle, as an object, objectified. So the aged as spectacle, the object of the gaze. And who are the bearers of the look? The young. In a refresher course, I remember last year in Kannur University, I asked the question to the participants there. Can you as literature, practitioners of literature, as teachers of literature, can any of you here tell me how many poems prescribed for us in the undergraduate or in the postgraduate programs have poems written by women for the men? We always have poems written by men for the women, for the lady love. We have umpteen numbers of poems and poems written by men for the lady love or for the women. But how many poems do we have written by a woman celebrating a man or venerating a man or admiring a man? And what do you think is the reason for that? This power imbalance. Literatures all along have always promoted this power imbalance, the gaze. How the gaze operates as epistemic violence again, how the gaze operates in the process of aging, and how they become a spectacle. There is this wonderful short story in Telugu where the old lady is made to sit outside in the balcony of her house. She's made to look as a spectacle. The same old lady who was once the apple of the eye for her son, now she finds herself, decentered. She's given a place in the balcony of the house. The title of the short story is called The Woodrose. It's a very short story, but again, literary gerontology would find this very appealing, especially. Now she says she can't have a look, she's looked upon. This power imbalance. So obviously it leads to the second point here, the objectification of the aged. And most importantly, the psychological effect it has upon the person subjected to the gaze. How much it affects their autonomy, their idea of selfhood, their concept of selfhood in the process when they are made to look at spectacle. I still remember one of my colleagues a couple of years, many years back, he was about to get down from a huge step down. So, out of care and concern, a few of us younger colleagues, we told him, "Sir, be careful." He was very offended. He said, "No, I'm not so old to call me, to tell me, be careful. I'm young, I'm very young. Don't ever tell me that. It's an insult for me when you say, sir, be careful. You're getting down a huge step." So again, when there is a loss of autonomy or selfhood because of the gaze or spectacle. And how does it operate in fairy tales? The gaze. Laura Mulvey gives us beautiful examples. I think 1975 that essay was. But the uses of I think enchantment, right? The uses of enchantment, a book that gave a turning point to the study of fairy tales in the 1970s, and then in the 1980s, thanks to a critique of the gaze. The next one, look at that, how they are described. Women especially, as objects of the gaze. I've given an example from a fairy tale. When the prince kisses the little mermaid in the tale, he kissed her rosy mouth. So the gaze panders to or caters to the desire, the gratification, not of the female reader, but of the male reader. The same way, in the aged, the gratification of the young against the aged. When the prince kisses the little mermaid in the tale, he kissed her rosy mouth, played with the long waving hair, and laid his head on her heart. How the gaze operates. Now, this is again a very interesting concept that Michel Foucault talks about when we analyze fairy tales and aging. Docile bodies that he talks about in his 1963 book. Check it out, Discipline and Punish. 1963 or 64. Yeah. Docile bodies. Examples of biopower. How the body becomes a passive instrument which cannot act but is acted upon. Even in the theological framework, you'll find in the epistles, you'll find, when I was young, I girded my belt, but I was old, someone else girded me. So, docile bodies, once the aging happens, aging sets in. Michel Foucault says, civilization, ideology, makes us docile bodies. See the connect with fairy tales also. How children were made to imbibe these concepts of being docile and disciplined. Ideology. Karl Marx calls it false consciousness. How we are made to imbibe these concepts. I think in 1975, Michel Foucault came up with this another book. What's that? Discipline and Punishment, 63, and then where he talks about the way power exerts itself on human beings, making them, that's why biopower. Discipline and Punish, he says how we become passive bodies, or rather victims acted upon. Now, the birth of the prison, that's the subtitle of the book, Discipline and Punish, the birth of the prison. How the body is acted upon by the agents of power. Here, in biopower, you have the medical gaze. Our doctor sometimes know. She looks at us, biopower, examples of biopower, and says, you are fit, you are unfit. The teacher, another example of biopower. How they hold sway over us. How they hold a domination over us using these tactics of biopower. Next one. Yes. Pierre Baudin. I love this concept called habitus, which can be very interesting in the study of fairy tales and aging. Just look at it in detail once you log out later. Internalized structures or schemes of perception, conception, and action. 3 words he uses is perception, conception, and action. Common to all members of the same group or class. Habitus. Internalized structures on how to behave, which Peter Barry calls the basic givens, which theory calls the normatives, or how we are structured using a lot of strictures. Man is born free from, but everywhere in chains. The same way. Habitus, internalized structures that we have internalized over a period of time on the aged, using the tales that have been handed down to us. This will be a very interesting study. Maybe this will also be a discussion, in the colloquium that you might have as part of this wonderful course. You can talk about how these internalized structures, schemes of perception, conception and action have affected our ways of seeing, the dominant ways of seeing, helping us or making us commodify or objectify the aged into categories of senility, passivity, and impotency. Now, this is a concept from Louis Althusser, a kind of a guru to Michel Foucault that I love a lot. Interpellation, something that connects to loss of autonomy. What is interpellation? How, when I see a cop at a distance, I don't have a helmet on me, I don't have my driving license on me. The moment I see a cop at a distance, I immediately take a U-turn and try to come out the other side. The reason is that very moment I become an interpellated individual. Interpellation robs me of my selfhood. I repeat, when I become interpellated to the customs, the ideologies, the power structures, it leads to a loss of autonomy. It leads to a loss of agency. Agency, in other words, is the ability to act autonomously. Do the aged people have agency? This is the question. Do the aged, the elderly, have their own agency? In feminism, we talk about the loss of agency of the woman. In children's literature, we talk about the loss of agency of the child. In post-colonial literature, we talk about the loss of agency of the colonized subject. In Marxist theories, we talk about the loss of agency of the proletariat. In the literature connected with the aged, in literary gerontology, we talk about the loss of agency of the elderly. How it affects one's idea of selfhood, one's idea of self. How can we give back this agency to the elderly? This is the question. Is there a possibility of giving back agency to the elderly? Ben Ockley, one of my favorite writers, says, the best way to do it is, we are all storied beings, he says. We are all storied beings, products of the stories that have been handed down to us over the ages, orature and literature. And he gives a beautiful solution. He says, change the stories. Change the stories. Make a difference, he says. The stories that have been handed down to us, celebrating one over the other, maybe that has resulted in a loss of agency to the elderly. This is one aspect. How can we think about solutions to this problem of loss of agency to the elderly? Especially when it comes to the realm of fairy tales. How is agency deprived to the old? And in what context? Let's not fix the blame. Some of us say, In the olden days, it was the men were patriarchal societies, the women are subjugated, fairy tales were written for the men. Yes, that's true. But instead of fixing the blame, let's fix the problem. Instead of cursing the darkness, let's light a candle. Mother Teresa says that. So instead of fixing the blame, what went wrong? Why did it go wrong? How can I give the agency back, the autonomy back? I told you the term agency means the ability to act autonomously. I do what I want to do at any point of time I wish to do it. Agency. And that is a very interesting concept. In the opposite term for interpellation is a term called individuation. What is individuation? Carl Jung uses this term. The moment I gain autonomy over myself, from loss of selfhood to gain of selfhood, from interpellation to individuation. I have an individual identity for myself as an agent being. I can determine what I want to do, my choices, my voice, my choice. I do it, not someone dictates to me. That is individuation. So the journey from interpellation to individuation. Interpellation, loss of autonomy, loss of selfhood. I'm not using the word identity deliberately because identity is something that is forced upon us. Today I might be an English teacher, but tomorrow I might not be an English teacher. Identities that we don in life every other day. When I go to the shop, I become a customer. When I go to the plane, I become a passenger. When I go abroad, I become a foreigner. Identities that are forced on me. And that is why literary gerontology talks about this crisis of identity. How can we solve this crisis of identity and bring back selfhood? In the study of literary gerontology. What is selfhood? Selfhood is devoid of all these identities that are given to us. When I invest too much on my identity, that is when I lose my sense of self. That is why right from the good old philosophers of Europe, Socrates and down, know thyself, not know thy identity. Identities are fluid. Postmodernism tells us. Identities are fluid. They are in a state of flux. But the concept of selfhood, how do we bring back this concept of selfhood to the individual? And the last one would be, this is a line I love a lot, the question that I think it's W.B.H. Williamson once asked, why tell stories? Why tell stories? In the context of fairy tales. Fairy tales, we all know, take us into a world beyond a mundane world, into realities that we don't necessarily believe in, where horses talk, ants dance, elephants will fly, a world of umpteen possibilities. So the question is, why tell stories? The beautiful answer he gives is, story carries us down. Story carries us down to narrative shared roots with history, knowledge and wisdom. And that is where the importance, I'm so happy that you have the Indian context also in your syllabus, in your as part of your coursework. Indeed, fairy tales from the Indian context will enhance our engagement with this wonderful course that you are intending to offer, because a story carries us down to narrative shared roots, not only with history, not only with knowledge, but also with wisdom. So these avenues would help us in the long run to change our perspectives towards the aged. And fairy tales are a very good starting point, because fairy tales, they have a dark side also to them. And when this dark side is critiqued, analyzed, evaluated, to bring out the undercurrents within them, the subtext within them, the context within them, I'm very sure that an egalitarian society where the autonomy is given back to the individual is an imminent possibility. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity. Now, if there are any questions, you may ask me.
Request the participants to put their questions on the chat box, and due to paucity of time, we would like to mention that we can accommodate only 3 questions at the maximum. Or the participants, if willing, could also unmute yourself and ask the question to the speaker yourself. Thank you, sir. So we assume there are no questions for the session now. Thank you, sir, for that enlightening, deconstructive reading on fairy tales and how they promote an ageist society. Who would have imagined a post-colonial reading of fairy tales, or how othering is perpetuated through these tales? You showed us how to problematize the seemingly innocuous stories we listen to or narrate. Thank you for demonstrating how to read fairy tales or any literary text for that matter. The feedback form is shared in the chat, and I request all participants to respond to receive your certificates. I request the Vice Principal and Associate Professor of English, Dr. Beulah Jayashree, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you is the best prayer that anyone could say. It expresses gratitude and understanding in its best. I feel honored to propose the vote of thanks formally here on behalf of the management, principal, and the Department of English to those who have been instrumental in making this project by Ms. Hilela a grand success. Thanking God for His immense grace and favor, but for which nothing could have proceeded, I wish to thank the United Board for Christian Higher Education in Asia and its incredible members, Dr. Y. Cheng, Vice President for Programs, Mr. Kevin Henderson, Director, Digital Content and Programming, Ms. Teiko Soga, Program Associate, Reverend Dr. Spurgeon, Consultant, Director of South Asia Programs, Dr. Mercy Pushpalatha, Program Consultant, South Asia Programs, Ms. Sarah Wong, Program Manager, who approved and funded the course Adaptive Design for Learning, which was offered by Ateneo de Manila University's Institute for the Science and Art of Learning and Teaching. I extend my warm thanks to our principal, Dr. Christiana Singh, and her administrative team, the United Board Coordinator of Lady Doak College, Dr. Beulah Rajkumar, the head of the Department of English, Dr. Geeta Kanakaraj, and her team of faculty for their support at every point of this interdisciplinary project. My heartfelt thanks are due to the evaluators, Dr. Beatrice Ann Decuto, Associate Professor and Head, Retired, Department of English, Lady Doak College, Dr. A. Zarina, Assistant Professor of Psychology, Women's Christian College, Chennai, Dr. Ann Stevens, Assistant Professor of Zoology, Retired, Madras Christian College, Chennai, for taking their time off and meticulously going through her project. I especially thank the resource persons, Dr. Udaya B. Jagadeesan, Dr. Rupa Ravikumar, Reverend Dr. John Samuel Ponusami, Right Reverend Dr. G. Paul Vasantakumar, Ms. R. Abhinaya, who traveled with Ms. Hilela in carrying out this project with enthusiasm and joy. I thank the special speaker of today, Dr. S. Samuel Rufus, for the informative session of fairy tales and aging. You made us go back in time, sir. I thank the video editing team, Mr. Satish and Ms. Karen, the CCM of Lady Doak College, CHRD, librarian, and the students who were involved in this for all the help rendered during the course of this project. Thank you all, dear participants, once again for joining us physically and virtually. You made this project presentation a purposeful academic exercise for us. Let us all go back and tell stories, fairy tales, and beat the monotony of old age and aging. Thank you.
Farewell until we meet another day for yet another intellectual deliberation. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.